Hey everyone, I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scottsy Business, and today we're here with Joel Valenzuela. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yes, you
He's a
did.
journalist. Awesome. He's a journalist and a content creator. He does a lot of similar stuff to what I do, but he has a very different approach where he's very focused on how you can spend crypto in your everyday life to pretty much cover everything. So I want to just dive right into that and get started. But I mean, first, if you want to give a little bit of background on yourself so people who aren't familiar with you might get a little bit of an idea of who you are.
Yeah, so hey everyone, I am Joel Valenzuela. I'm a independent crypto journalist primarily, and sort of my claim to fame is that since first off, I don't think I've ever bought any crypto in my life. I've only ever received it for payment. And basically starting at the very end of 2015, I decided I was going to see if you could actually be your own bank, try to live all the rhetoric we keep hearing in the crypto world. And so I stopped taking any fiat compensation. And then a few months later, I decided to close my bank account. And then I've been living unbanked off of crypto since 2016. And during that space, I worked for Dash Decentralized Autonomous Organization for a few years, and I still live pretty much exclusively off of Dash.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what are your like main methods of spending? Do you use like a card or what does that look like?
Yeah, today I haven't actually touched like a card in several years. In the very beginning,
Wow.
you could there was a few different crypto cards out there, but part of my whole thing, my whole reasoning behind not having a bank account is I don't like permission services. I don't like services that you have to ask permission to use, that someone can just shut down your account, that kind of thing. And specifically also for privacy reasons, I don't like having to give my ID. And I mean, obviously, that's not a luxury everyone can have, but if everyone has to still give their ID and use a censorship prone service in order to use crypto, it's not really crypto. So it's part of the great experiment. I just sort of eschewed all that stuff. So in the early days, they would give you a card that had, like I say, a $2,500 limit until when you got past that, then you have to give your ID, or in my case, get a different card. And then the laws changed, and then they had to ratchet that down to $1,000 limit. And then it just now they don't really exist anymore, as far as I know. There's a lot of because obviously card providers are big competitors, so obviously I don't want to play well with crypto. So there are quite a
Mm.
few cards out there today, like I know Uphold has one that's I believe in beta in the US, and I think they're going to expand later. Seems very promising. People that use it like it, but again, it's like a bank. So
Yeah.
primarily, it's hard to tell primarily, but um, I live in this magical land of enchantment known as New Hampshire, which has a very high concentration of people um, that actually accept cryptocurrency. And so I
Mm.
would say about half of my crypto spending tends to be direct, as in
Wow.
directly in crypto and directly to local businesses around here that accept it directly. And as far as I know, either they don't convert or it's not through an auto conversion. Like they hold it and then they later do something with it. And I go, for example, I'll get a lot of my groceries from some farmers markets where I know the vendors personally, and they take right into their, Coinomi wallet, for example. They just take the crypto right there. So that's about half of it. And then depending on the month, I use Bitrefill a lot, and Bitrefill is something that works really well outside of, my small bubble over here. Basically, you could buy a gift code with cryptocurrency and then just use it for so many major chains. Now, my preference tends to be e-gifter through the Dash website, which would be giftcards.dash.org, because you do get an actual discount, sometimes up to like 8 or 10% on whatever you buy. But
Nice.
Bitrefill has a slightly higher selection, and especially for non-US countries. And more importantly, the app, you can get the gift code delivered instantly. And so this is, I think, a Dash unique kind of a thing. Like, for example, if you buy with Bitcoin or Litecoin or something, you have to wait for a confirmation. But because of Dash's instant send technology, I hit buy on the gift card, and then I receive it. And so, for example, I can just buy in line at the store, and I
Mm.
know what my total is. I put in the amount to buy, and I hit buy, and I send the transaction, and then I get the code and can scan it right away with the cashier, and so it's
Okay.
almost like they accept it directly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, because for me personally, here in Canada, I was looking for such a long time to find a solution, because there isn't very many places around me that actually would accept it, and so I found Bitvo and Local Coin here,
Hmm.
and they're partnered with Visa, so I don't actually know how much they're really tracking me. They're probably tracking everything I do.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's still a way for me to spend crypto. I mean, I obviously need to find a better solution, but that's how I'm able to do it right now. Like I'll buy groceries and stuff. I'll just load Bitcoin onto it. My question is, do you have any concerns about like volatility if you're living completely off of crypto? Do you have some coins in stable coins, and do you switch out, or like what does that look like for you?
I think the only stable coin I have is like almost $1 worth of DAI that came from PubZeroX kind of publications and tips and stuff.
Yeah.
But no, it's kind of been a crazy roller coaster over the last few years, and obviously the price goes up and down and up and down. And for people that think that's like super foreign or horrific, it's kind of like running a business, especially a small business. Is you don't have a consistent paycheck every single day. Yeah, especially if you're in like a food service industry thing, like you make most of your money on the weekends, or in, for example, New Hampshire is a very tourist heavy state. You make most of your money on the summer months, and the rest of the year you don't actually make money. So if the summer months
Mhm.
don't happen, which might not happen in this case, which we could see some very bad things for small business owners, you kind of get cleaned out. So it's the same thing with crypto. First off, if you get paid, you probably don't you don't negotiate in like a locked in rate because however you get it, can you imagine if you're like, oh, I'll get like 50 dash a month or whatever, like, 2, 3 Bitcoin a month, and then the price goes 10 times as much. Now you're being exorbitantly overpaid. But so what
Mhm.
I would say is take care of all your essential bills as soon as that stuff comes. As soon as you get it, you pay it. And then um, basically, if you are super close to the bone, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. But there's ups and downs. Whenever the price is up, that's when you pay everything you can, maybe even get ahead on your bills like a few months. And then
Mhm.
if it goes down, then you sort of ride it out. You can kind of deal with those fluctuations that way. And then also, I believe with Bitrefill, if you have an account, you can buy Bitrefill credit, and then that sort of locks in the value. So if the price
Oh,
pumps to
okay.
an epic amount, you just say like, I don't have all this, I don't need all this right now, but let me just spend a few grand on Bitrefill credit, and then just throw it into gift cards as you to sort of live off it to lock in that value. But on the
Okay.
overall, crypto's gone up more than it's gone down. So as long as you have some, it goes up, you're doing well. And then when it goes down, I mean, whenever you kind of get that like pumpy feeling like this is at a peak, that's when you want to buy everything you need to for a while, and then it goes off the cliff, and then you just
Mhm.
sort of like hold tight, don't really spend it very much. And so at dollar cost averaged out, it tends to be, you tend to do a lot better. But it isn't quite as stable of an existence, where some people don't like being their own boss because there's so much risk and volatility in their life. They just wanted, like, what hours do I show up? I'll show up, do enough work to not get fired, and leave, and then here we go, I
Mm.
get my money. Some people do
Yeah.
that, but if you're wanting to be if you're willing to take the more ups and downs of the world, then it's very possible to do that without hedging into, say, a stable coin or something else.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm self-employed too, so I totally know like that what that's like. And yeah, for me with Bitvo and Local Coin, they both work very differently, where one I can put my crypto in and it'll automatically switch to Canadian dollars and just keep that whenever I put it in, and the other one it will cash it out as I spend it. So it's pretty convenient because I could kind of switch between the two when it's up and or when it's down, and then that's like the best way that you can use it. Do you find like over the long term that you've actually saved money because of when it's gone up, and then you've spent and then saved when it's gone down? Did you find that over the long term you've almost saved money doing that, or has it been pretty like basically, like you said, dollar cost average? Has it pretty much evened out, or what does that look like?
I haven't kept super direct tabs on it, but I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
fair enough.
I'm pretty sure it's been much more of a positive than a negative. I mean, when I was living completely off of Bitcoin, just starting it off, it was, I was pretty close to the bone for most of the time, so I didn't really have much to actually see go up or down. And later in 2016, I just converted to using Dash entirely because, there was no Bitcoin Cash or other thing at the time, and the
Hmm.
transactions were too slow and expensive and actually causing hardships for me. Like, for example, trying to load the card before I go out to lunch like an hour later and it's still not loaded, and then I have to skip lunch for the day. A few things like that were pretty nasty. But
Yeah.
so at that time, like I wrote some article and someone paid me 3 Dash for it, which is $7 per Dash at the time. So, and then at present prices, that's, 10 times as much. So, or actually a little bit more. But so mostly when I started to get really a lot like an actual respectable income and living off crypto was late 2016, early 2017. And at the very bottom of the prices, it kind of like a lot of that stuff that I made in the early days was still positive on that. And so
Hmm.
the price goes crazy in late 2017. You pay for whatever you need to, and then it doesn't just go down overnight. Like, it's going down over a series. And so there's still like, how much did you make? How much of the stuff did you make when it was lower? And then when it's up, then you just pay your bill right away and then kind of don't do anything else. And then, yeah, I think it's pretty much worked out. I don't know if it's still not the kind of thing that most people should probably do if they can't handle it. Especially, if they do like a 50-50 type thing, might be easier. But I bet
Hmm.
if you take the average crypto price chart and view that as like a profitability or something like that for a small business, most people would take that because
Hmm.
it trends up. And so if most
Yeah.
people are like, hey, yeah, like I get to just be very careful with, as long as I can manage this storm, I know I'm profiting big time. And so that's kind of, if you kind of view it like that, which, depends on how optimistic you are about the future of crypto. I mean, it could work out quite well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think like there's even opportunity for people to be saving money if they are very, very
Mhm.
patient and, to do the things that you said. Um, so we haven't really gotten into the May Fiat challenge. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Hashtag fiat-free challenge. So I was chatting with some friends, actually the founders of Float, on a podcast a while back, and then we're sort of talking about basically how a lot of the world is scared about the future with this whole, viral pandemic stuff going on. And essentially, I don't feel as scared as a lot of people because I have very little exposure to fiat currency. And I mean, not to get too political and current eventsy and stuff, but essentially people are printing a whole lot of money. And I
Mhm.
think the dollar has done better than others, but it's still not looking good. And so basically, if people pay for all this kind of stuff that needs to be paid for by inflating the supply, and you don't get that directly, your percentage of that value starts going down over time. Your purchasing power goes down. And so if you have life savings in some kind of government issued currency, you could see that value drop significantly over the next few years. Of course, it's hard to know exactly how or why, or it's hard to know exactly how that's going to happen, but I think it's pretty much guaranteed to happen to some extent. And so I think people should have exposure into scarce assets of some kind, like scarce cryptocurrencies or precious metals or a little bit of both, or however that works out. Now the
Mhm.
problem is, one thing I noticed when the markets tanked initially, all the markets, in response to the virus. Of course, crypto took a big dive, and then we had safe haven assets like gold and silver took a big dive, and since recovered, but it's still obvious that in a panic, people want cash. They want whatever they can buy their toilet roll with. And if you have a big hoard of Bitcoin on your Trezor or whatever, and it goes to the moon when everything else, is crumbling. How are you going to spend it to actually get the value out of that? Then you might have to take big losses if someone's willing to do some kind of a trade with you, or it becomes much, or more importantly, you might hit a desperate situation where you're just trying to buy stuff in a very short term time frame, and you don't have time to figure things out, and then you might be in a really bad spot if you're just scrambling to figure out how to use it. So that's what I'm trying to encourage people to do, is to use whatever they hope will hold their value long term. So the basic idea is for the month of May, try to use as little fiat currency as possible, up to none if you can. But let's be honest, it's not necessarily going to be realistic for everyone without some kind of jury rigging. And basically do everything off of crypto you can, post about it, ask questions, share your purchases, other things like that with the hashtag fiat-free challenge, for example, on Twitter. But every platform I'm on, I use that. So basically just do that, see how far you can get. And I think a lot of people will be extremely surprised at just how far they can get. I think this is a unique time right now when you can actually get pretty far. And so also I'm going to be doing a video series on just super user-friendly how to live on Dash, which, because that's my expertise, you can probably live on a few others, but this is what I know. So I'll be showing basically how to do it so people just follow along, and then they don't have to even wonder anymore.
I'm curious, how does this play out for your taxes?
Yeah, well, that's more of a hypothetical type question, I guess. It's as far as, so here's the thing. The landscape of that has changed quite a bit over quite a few years. And essentially, what people want is, if you incur large capital gains, you should be reporting it. And that's kind of the long and short of that. Now, for people who are trying to be very meticulous with everything, there are quite a few accounting services that now work with crypto companies that just do it all for you. And so, for example, the one that I know and I'm more familiar with is called Node 40. And Node 40 is very familiar with Dash specifically. And, they know how to basically track the profit and loss on every single transaction you do. And then, you can just calculate whatever you end up owing. Now, what I can really hope for is that at some point there's been so many laws that have been floated that basically would add a spending limit of, like, if it's under a certain amount, if it's like a small purchase, then you don't owe anything off of that, because that would be too much of an accounting burden. So that's kind of, it does definitely make it easier to say, oh, I bought and I sold. I bought and I sold. Now, for example, if you buy and then you instantly spend it on bills, you instantly spend everything on bills, pretty much, which is, a great way to start, by the way. If you just know you can pay like 5 major bills with this, you buy some, use it for bills right away. That's pretty easy. And then, of course, whatever else is left over, it's like, all right, well, I just got this, and I spent this much on, whatever you call it, like coffee or whatever you're buying with it. And then, it's pretty easy to do that account after that. But ultimately, it's like an accounting thing. And I do know that there have been jurisdictions that have accepted cryptocurrency directly. I don't know if they continue to do that, but there are a few different bill pay services, and you can. One of the great hacks that is, there's Walmart has a bill pay service, and basically you can pay anything without a bank account. You can pay anything through that service, including like taxes and child support or whatever. They mentioned a whole big list of things. And so if all you have is, like, say, paper cash, you can go through that one and you don't have a bank account. Also, you can, and this is what makes it a little bit of a hack, is on payment terminals that use Walmart Pay. If the bill pay service has Walmart Pay, you could theoretically, or according to what I've heard, other people have actually had good success doing this, load your Walmart app with gift code credit from, say, Bitrefill, and then go use that to pay your bills directly that way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Is there any like tax hacks that you're like willing to share? Like do you have to claim gift cards and stuff like that? Like I'm curious how that works.
Yeah, I don't know. And this is one of those domains where I'm definitely not the expert. I'm
Yeah.
just so I would probably. I have a few attorney friends that I know that have actually been running around, going around, actually trying to spend it around town just to familiarize themselves with the technology and its the different things you have to deal with. And would probably try to. I'd hope to get more familiar with them and get some of their professional opinions, or to post on, maybe even interview them in the future. But yeah, I don't know if there's any specific ones like that. I do know that this is most of the people. So I've been in the space since 2013, so it's about 7 years. And as far as I know, a lot of the people that I know were even more OG than that, or like the 2011 days and stuff. And so that's the real rough kind of time of it, is because you have people that just started like running a little laptop and just it kicks out little coins, and then they don't think it's worth anything yet, and it's just like, oh, I made a new token, I found a Dogecoin or whatever. It's like you're just playing around with this stuff, and then all of a sudden now today they might be terrified because they're stuck in a situation where I just got all this value. I didn't think it was going to be worth this much, at least not this quickly, from this random like running a program, just nerding out, and then all of a sudden I don't know what I owe, how I'm supposed to do stuff. And so that can be pretty scary for some people, especially back in the early
Mhm.
days. The thing that I've on a kind of on a more anecdotal level, the thing I've noticed the most is most of the worry tends to come around exchanges specifically, especially early exchanges, because early exchanges, it was the Wild West and people were doing all kinds of shady things on that. And so it can kind of, I think that's kind of come back to bite a lot of people. But generally speaking, that's where stuff shows up the most, is when you buy or sell on exchanges. And that's the thing that I don't think you can have a lot of leeway in terms of how carefully you calculate that kind of stuff. I think that's the kind of thing that you have to be very, very careful with, is because it's reported how much you bought, how much you sold, and that's the number one. I don't think, at least to not yet, I don't think the government particularly cares what you do as far as like the activities. The big thing is, are you doing something deliberately illegal, like buying something you shouldn't be, or
Mm.
are you making a lot of money and not giving us any? That's of course the biggest
Mm.
thing. They want their cut.
Yeah, my assumption was always that if it's connected to a bank account, they're probably just monitoring through that. But, in your case where you don't have a bank account, I would assume that it's obvious, like it's probably much, much more challenging for them to be able to track what you're doing.
Mhm.
Um, do you worry about privacy at all? Like, do you use any privacy coins when you're doing things, or do you do any like coin mixing, or like that's not really a concern?
Yeah, definitely. Now, the problem with privacy coins is most of them people don't know how to use, and most of them can't be used for very many things.
Yeah.
So outside of like darknet markets, it's like there's not a lot you can do with a lot of things. Now, that's what makes Dash sort of unique, is that it's something that has some built-in privacy features depending on what wallet you're using, and is actually spendable places. So first off, yes, absolutely. It's something that I always advocate. Everyone always mix their funds whenever they can. They're for spending purposes. And it's not even well, some kind of like dark and shady thing. It's kind of a basic necessity, because if you think about it, if you swipe your card, the bank knows what you bought, and the person and the merchant knows that you bought, but they don't necessarily know anything else. I mean, the bank knows everything. But
Mhm.
if you send a cryptocurrency transaction, like say I send some Bitcoin somewhere, I buy something, they can figure out how much money I had in that address. Now,
Mm.
if they have enough data, like enough addresses to correlate with my personal purchases, they can find out how much entire money I have. And I think there was some
Mhm.
Princeton study that was able to correlate is basically able to find out how people shopping with Bitcoin online, how much money they have. And people can't do that with your bank account unless they actually hack into it. It's not public information. But so if you're spending Bitcoin online, like say you're using like a purse.io or something like that, and then people just see it all go in there, and they can correlate that with like shipping addresses or email addresses. If they get enough of those addresses, they can kind of correlate that and figure out kind of how much you have. So not using any kind of advanced privacy thing right now is worse than using for privacy than using a bank account, which is kind of a, or can be worse, which is kind of a antithetical, kind of self-defeating with crypto. So I would say you always mix, and then, if you, for invoicing purposes, I mean, every service you use basically sends you some sort of receipt or invoice or something. So that's kind of, that's kind of have it all if you want to, like cash does not have any traceable elements to it for the most part. Yet people still use it in non-sinister ways all the time, all over the world, particularly in places like the US and Germany. You'd be surprised if you go around Germany how much they don't want you to pay in cards. They're like, do you have the paper stuff? So there's so many cash-heavy economies that then no one really cares that you use that. It just, can you account for what you've done? Can you make sure you haven't been stealing money or doing something shady?
Yeah. I always it's always interesting to me when people say stuff like, "Oh, well, why would you need to make it private? Like, what are you trying to hide?" It's like, well, do you post every cash transaction on Twitter? So you got to kind of make those connections for
the answer
for
is, by the way, yes, you do if you use Venmo, because Venmo had a little setting on that was enabled by default that automatically pushed out notifications of everything you bought to all your friends. So literally just put your whole financial history in front of the whole world without asking you first. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of why these crypto solutions are so important. I mean, also it's important to consider that anyone outside of the crypto space definitely wouldn't be able to find out anything about your Bitcoin spending and your transactions. It's obviously the more technically inclined people who can actually figure that out. So obviously it's still a very, very tiny fraction of people who might actually be able to do that. But yeah, definitely still important to have that privacy. So for people who are wanting to get into spending crypto and participating in the May Fiat Free Challenge, what do you think is the first steps or some of the easiest way to get started?
So what I would say, the easiest thing to do is I would recommend first off, if you know how to use cryptocurrency, get a wallet, send it back and forth. That's the super basic stuff, which of course I'll be covering in this video series as well. But let's just assume you have an educated enough audience that has used this. First thing would be, I have to recommend a service called Lamium, Lamium.io. Lamium.io. And it's a bill pay service for people who are familiar with Purse, the way Purse used to work, might still work, depending on, it's unclear the future of the company right now. But basically, what you'd do is you'd upload an Amazon wish list, and then people would basically, they'd buy your stuff for you, and then you'd get Bitcoin in exchange for that. So it'd be a way of using a third-party service to basically shop on Amazon. So Lamium's the same way. Basically, you have people who want to buy, people just want to buy cryptocurrency without using exchanges for whatever reason, whether it's privacy or fees or whatever it is. And so basically, you upload your bill, and then say your electricity bill, they'll pay it for you, and then your crypto gets released from escrow, and then they get it. So, when I tried it most recently, it was within a day it got taken care of. It happened pretty quickly. It's a lot easier in Europe because of the way the banking system works, but in the US it still worked. So basically, you can just upload your invoice and pay the amount worth of crypto, and then someone takes care of it for you. And so I'm pretty sure it's pretty open-ended as far as bills you can have paid. But I mean, if you just say, hey, let me take all the bills I get a statement for, and just take a picture of all the paper, put it up there, and just knock those out. That's the easiest way to be like, wow, the scariest bills to pay, the ones that are the most like, you know, there's fewer services about that, I can actually take care of those. And then the second is just go to bitrefill.com, and just scroll through and just see if you use any of those kind of companies or services or things, or you could, or you want to, and just say, hey, I am going to Walmart later. Maybe I'll get some Walmart credit and do this. Or, hey, I'm going to go get a burrito at Chipotle. I'm pretty sure they have like Tim Hortons and stuff in there too. They got all kinds of things. And then try buying the gift code and having it ready in advance. And then if you're using Dash, you can actually do it much quicker. But do a trial run of you buy it, and then there you go. And then there's a site that I really like called cryptoemporium.eu, which sells all kinds of stuff. For example, my phone, I bought that one there. And they also sell things like cars and houses and boats and things. So you can buy those, and it's a crypto only site, and it prices things only in crypto as well. So see if you can buy some cool stuff there. And I would there's a couple of maps that I would use. And again, you can put all links to this if you want or whatever. But discover-.com also has a mobile app. It's like Yelp, but it's for Dash. And so you can go around and find if there's an in-person merchant somewhere near you that accepts it. And the much more limited map, but it's more reliable. It's anypaymap.com. And so that's run by the AnyPay payment processor, and they have like a point of sale app. And the good thing about that is they color code the merchants based on how recently they've accepted a cryptocurrency transaction, whether it's within the last week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever. So it's not just like, oh, someone put this listing here somewhere, I don't know if this person still does it. It's so you can actually see, oh, like a month ago someone paid with crypto here. It's probably new enough that I can call them up and see if they still do, and then you can go in person, and if you spend crypto there, then the marker turns to green. So those are the ones that I would say get started on. And big thing is whatever social media platform you use, but I'm sure most heavily on Twitter, the hashtag fiat-free challenge, it will be populated with stuff. And if people you see posting in there, like myself, you can just ask questions, whether it's in the hashtag or you just do a private message or something like that, and just feel free to get involved and just say, hey, just think about the stuff that you buy, the kinds of things that you buy, the kinds of things that you need to use money on, and just think about how am I going to use crypto for that? And then there you go.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So is there anything else that you want to touch on outside of spending crypto? I know we've been going for about 30 minutes. I think we've covered some pretty good stuff. Is there anything else you want to make sure we touch on?
I would just say is to talk about the spending crypto element I think it's important to do, because with in science you have the scientific method where you have a hypothesis and you go test it in different environments and then see if it's true. And so I have a feeling that a lot of crypto money flows through hearsay, whether it's, oh, this company integrated that, this thing does this. Does any of this stuff really work? And so you don't really understand your product that you're pushing if you're a crypto, say influencer or you work or whatever. You don't really understand it unless you use it. And there's a lot you can learn. Like if you're fascinated with the technology, there's a lot you can learn by using it. A lot you can learn about like the pain points, about what's there, what isn't there yet. And I think we can all go a lot further along. One thing's for sure is, this is a strange phenomenon that I kind of noticed, is crypto doesn't have the same stigma that fiat does. And I noticed that when you're buying things with money, financial transactions have some sort of a seriousness to them, a gravitas. It's like, oh, we're doing some big people stuff here. And there's almost like a shame to it to a certain extent, and when you use crypto, it's just so effortless. And there's a fun to it that you cannot really put into words. And some of it is just how easy the user experience is in some cases. But a lot of it is just that like no one's stopping you, just click and just send stuff. And I find that really expands the concept of money beyond just what you pay for. Like, for example, tipping people online, like all the social platforms that I'm sure both of us use, someone will throw you money just because they like what you said. And it's just
Mhm.
perfectly normal. And then you can make, a little bit of a side hustle on just talking online and people throwing money at you. But can you imagine if you're just chatting with a group of friends and someone like says something, oh, that was good, here, take a $5. It's like, that is horrifically awkward. Like, that just, no one would do that, but people do that with crypto all the time. And there's just
Yeah.
something about the fun and the freedom that does, that I think you catch the bug and it's hard to get rid of. And so I would say, expose yourself to the virus. I'm sorry for the politically incorrect terms in this time, but expose yourself to the fun of using crypto, because guess what? It's pretty contagious.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. Like, I think there's a common like psychology or phenomenon where people go and when they spend money, it's always like you look at the receipt and there's just like that feeling of like regret and you're just like, ah. Even though you have the same amount of wealth, like you've got the wealth in the
Hmm.
basket or in the cart, but like you look at the bill and you're just like I'm losing wealth, but it's like you got the wealth in front of you. But when it's like when I go and I make a crypto transaction, I'm just like, oh, like it works. It's so cool. Like, and I'm like looking around. I'm like, do you know what I just did? And like to
Yeah,
the people beside
it's a
me, like
sense
I'm
of
at like the
accomplishment.
yeah, right. Like I'm at like the self checkout, and I look to the person next to me. I'm like, yeah, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? I think it's
it.
really it's just really empowering and it's so interesting that you can do this already. And it feels like this is the kind of stuff that when I first got into crypto, that
Hmm.
I like this was like science fiction to me when I first got in. And now it is a reality. So it's just really amazing to see that progression. And and if I bring this up, right, like when things were normal, I would be Ubering a lot because I don't have a car or anything because I try to be extremely
Hmm.
financial minimalist. That's also part of it too, right? Maybe we should talk a little bit about that before we end off. But
Yeah.
like I think it's really really interesting because I'll get in an Uber and I'll talk to the guy or the girl driving and I'll say, like I'm always curious if they know much about crypto,
Hmm.
and typically they don't. And the most important question that they ask, or the most frequent question that they ask, is, "But can you really use it anywhere, or can you really spend it anywhere? Is it really some like can I just go and buy gas with it?" And I'll say, "Yeah, like I have a card right here." And they'll be like, what? Like, how don't more people know about this? And I'm like, because I don't know, like you should look into it. And I think it's just like that lack of awareness that the technology is actually way further along than people perceive, and they just aren't aware of all these solutions. So that's why I think the fiat-free challenge is also really really important.
Well, that Uber's a great example because you can get Uber gift credit through eGifter and through Bitrefill and places like that.
Okay.
And not only does that just work, but your Uber balance works for Uber Eats and stuff as well. So that's already like you can travel and eat off of that. And so
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of times when I have had that Uber conversation has been going to a crypto conference, and then they're like, "Oh, can you really use it?" I'm like, "Well, I bought my plane ticket off of cheapair.com, and I use that also to pay for the hotel that I'm going to, and then I got the gift code, the gift credit, I mean the Uber credit off from crypto as well that I'm using for you right here, and I'll probably get some delivery from the same thing, and this is in a completely foreign country, even in a lot of times, or a completely foreign city that I don't know the deal with anything. So if I can do it here, can I kind of do it everywhere? And
Yeah.
as far as the fun feeling of spending it, that kind of brings me back to the story of like when I got rid of my bank account. I used it to sort of cash out some crypto back in the day, but then one day I was going to cash out enough to like pay rent, and then I noticed I had like a significant negative balance, and I was like, "What happened to all the money?" And so some person like 1,000 miles away, like it was some sort of check fraud thing, and like I didn't use checks in like 6 7 years at that point, but someone scribbled something on a piece of paper somewhere, and then they just like cleaned out my account. And of course I got the whole transaction reversed and got everything taken care of, but they even showed the picture of the what this this check, this fake check, and nothing resembling my signature or anything. Just like you just let some random person who scribbled random things on a piece of paper just like clear out and try to buy a used car with my like that didn't raise any flags, like, and just the vulnerability of looking at your bank account as something that's not yours. It could be gone
Mm,
tomorrow. And it's this very scary feeling. And anyone who's lived close to the bone knows the feeling of being scared to know what happens when you open the account. What's the number you're going to find in there? Because that's what the fiat world works on. They take money out. With crypto, you have to consent to every single spend. And
mhm,
I mean, obviously you can get robbed, you can get hacked, but that's like cash. It's like someone actually breaks into your house kind of a deal. But
mhm,
with fiat, you basically, anytime you use it, you give people permission to just draw out everything from your account if they want, and you can yell and argue about it later. But the point is, you don't know what that number is going to be when you open your bank account. It could be anything. You could just have like, oh, I can't feed my family now. It could be that. It could be like that. But with crypto, the valuation might go up and down, but however much you actually have, you always know what that number is going to be. And there's just some kind
mhm.
of peace of mind of, even if my destiny is crazy, I still control it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really, really important because even with things like banks, you got to pay them. Like for example, like I have an unlimited checking account, so I have to have a certain amount of money, or I have to pay $16 a month. So it's weird that I have to pay to be able to use my money.
Mm-hmm.
Or if my account went under zero, overdraft. I mean, you couldn't do that with crypto, but there's a lot of times where you'll be penalized for being poor, or whatever it might be. The bank will penalize you in different ways and make things not very easy.
Mm-hmm.
Like they also act as like a portal to trading and investing. And if there's an issue there, they're closed on holidays. They're closed. Uh, there's a lot of times where you can't access your money. So you wonder, is it true? I always say this when I'm looking at different crypto platforms. If
Mm-hmm.
there's some weird restriction on being able to access your money, I say I don't think that's actually your money. If there's all these restrictions around it, it's more like a privilege to. So like it seems very, very sketchy to me, and crypto solves a lot of that. So I think that's really, really important. Do you want to talk a little bit about like cutting down on expenses to be able
Yeah.
to make this more possible? Because I'm sure you probably do a lot of financial minimalist stuff, probably similarly to what I do. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that, and some tips for people who want to get into this, but also deal with lifestyle inflation.
Yeah, and that's it's one of those things where, and this goes beyond the scope of crypto and even finance. It's into a more thing about the world. So,
Yeah.
as you were mentioning with the bank account and all the minimums and the things like that, you're the product. You're not like the customer. Like they're,
Mm,
I would think they're sort of taking advantage of you. And the consumerist world, which should not, any criticism of consumerism should not be construed as a criticism of the free market system. They're completely different things. But essentially, the world runs on overspending and debt. And so, for example, most people never own most of what they have. Like they have a car payment and they don't actually have the car themselves. Like they don't put almost nothing down. They
mhm,
rent, or when they buy a house, and this is one of the craziest things, is people who buy a house, buy a property. First off, they don't actually own the property for a very long time. They're just renting until it's theirs, sort of.
mhm,
And even when they do, they owe a certain amount to the government, because really you just buy the privilege to rent from the government. And
mhm,
I mean, maybe not trying to get too ideological there, but essentially you never own your property as far as your land. So I think that a lot of things get encouraged, like spending things. Oh, you get bonus points if you use your card a bunch. There's a bunch of incentives to try to, what I would say, trick you into living beyond your means. A lot of sales, a lot of other things like that that just try to get you to spend a lot more. And there's a freedom in using stuff as a tool and not as a goal. A lot of people think, oh, I got to get this, I got to get that, I got to everything else. And what you got to think about is what kind of quality of life do you want? What do you like? What really matters the most to you? And then just don't spend money on everything else. And the famous podcaster and former Navy SEAL and jiu-jitsu guy Jocko Willink is famous for saying discipline equals freedom. And so financial discipline equals financial freedom. And if you don't have financial freedom, you don't really have freedom. I mean, that's like number one freedom is a freedom to protect yourself, over your own physical self. And then number two freedom is financial freedom. Free speech is a lowly number third. I mean, it's still very important, but if you don't have the first two, you can't really speak freely. So you need financial freedom. And if you think about waste, like if you think about what you spend money on, there's nothing wrong with spending money. What you got to think of is how much value you're getting out of it for what you're actually sacrificing. So, for example, what do you really need to have that good of a car? I mean, if you have a nice sports car and it's like a treat as a way of thanking yourself for your hard work and making a whole lot of money, for example, yeah, it's fine. But like your commuter vehicle, do you really need to pay something exorbitant for something relatively new that's just like a newer version of just a boring old silver sedan or something? Like, no, come on, you don't need that. And then how many new outfits do you, I mean, how many, like basically how much clothes do you, how many different outfits do you need that you just need enough so that people don't catch you wearing the same one more than a couple times. You don't need it new all the time. Don't buy something that you're not going to like in a week. Just don't do that kind of stuff. Cook more at home. There's a bunch of ways that you can basically, for your quality of life to stay the same, you can actually cut down a whole lot of money. Like, don't waste so much. How about, like, for example, one of the crazy quality of life things I did is about a year and a half ago, I got an espresso machine, which, I guess was around like the $600 range. And then because of different discounts and stuff and using crypto and stuff, it was like half that. I saved so much on that machine because that's so many times I didn't have to go out for coffee. And I could just do all that at home, save a ton of money on that. And then if I did go out, it would only be for like change of scenery or like a treat kind of things. I wouldn't have to go spend going out coffee prices on just maintenance, on just keeping myself going to the next day. And so every time you eat out, it should only be for a treat. It should be special. It should be, it should not be just to feed yourself because,
Yeah.
And just those kinds of things of where you just see everywhere you're bleeding money for no reason. And if you can really condense what you're actually bleeding out every single month, if you can condense it to a lot, you have a lot left over to do things like travel the world, for example, or buy that splashy sports car that you actually want instead of just, if you drive a terrible beater around for a while, you can get the cool car. You don't have to like do this. They sell you on the middle thing of like, I get this car that it's not my dream car, but I'm paying dream car prices for it. So
yeah.
So I'd say,
like I think it's really, really important for people to build their budget around what's most important to them. So I literally just wrote an article about this yesterday called Lifestyle Inflation and Lifestyle Foundation. So lifestyle inflation is where people get more money and they say, well, now I can afford to buy more things. But typically, and this is what I wrote, typically people think as long as I can afford to pay for the loan or the credit on such thing, then that's affording it. But that's not really, right? Because then you're just putting yourself into this debt cycle. And that's what I think lifestyle inflation, or more or less, is. Whereas lifestyle foundation is, I really value these things. I need this much to afford to be able to keep this up. That's what I need to be able to sustain. Everything else is like a bonus. And if I can get that, then that's great. But if not, this is the only things that I need to have like an ideal lifestyle that I like. And I also think it's important for people to budget. Is that something that you, I'm curious, when did you start getting into like financial minimalism and budgeting and all the things that would kind of come along with this? Was that when you kind of started, or was that something that you were already doing before you got into this?
So I was for giant chunks of my life, I've been kind of broke. And there was very few times in my life when I had a lot of surplus. So I was just never really a big spender anyway. Um, but it was most noteworthy, like when I started living off of crypto at the end of 2015. I decided, I was going to quit my little whatever part-time job I was doing, and I just said I'm going to live off crypto. So I just quit my job and had no job, like, to take the plunge. And so luckily I found like a writing gig at Cointelegraph pretty soon after, and then I started doing other stuff. And then, but like while you're figuring out this, who's going to pay me in Bitcoin in 2015, whereas 2020 it's a entirely different story. It's a lot easier, not super easy, but it's still a lot easier. So back then, it was like I was living extremely close to the bone because of all that stuff, and it was that kind of like really reinforced the habits that live to this day, where I got good at some crazy things like having like a $9.67 grocery budget for the week and making that work. And obviously I don't do that anymore, but it's like if you can get by through a week and eat like off of that, then like 10% of what you might otherwise spend, then all of a sudden that just opens up possibilities for the rest of what you got. And if you say, hey, I'm going to walk and bike, like, you get a bike, and how much money in gas do you not spend? How much in gym memberships do you avoid? And even when you can actually have the surplus funds to spend on the stuff you care about. And of course, a great sort of example of that is, I live in like an slightly under 1,000 square foot place, and you share it with another person. But in doing that, I'm like walking distance to like 3 breweries downtown, a whole bunch of coffee shop stuff. I could see the river right outside of my window here. I got a heated parking spot that, for the winter when it melts all the snow away. And it's like, I got all these like swanky elements because I'm super minimalistic in the amount of real estate I take up. And also, I have a bunch of, home gym equipment in the background. If you crank the camera a little bit, that I don't have to spend a gym membership. I don't have to do a bunch of other stuff. I cook from home, I have my home espresso machine. Like, I have it all figured out here so that you can then afford more on like a nicer place. For example, there's like that whole kind of thing. And also just not having debt, not having all that stuff just enables you to do stuff like that. And then I also think that people have lost the concept of savings because there's no good way of saving, because your paper money is devalued over the years. And I remember very acutely like $5 movie tickets being a kind of normal thing. Now it's 3 times that much. I've seen the purchasing power go down year after year. And I mean, I would grow up in Mexico in the 90s when the peso crisis happened. And I remember the exchange rate was 7 pesos to the dollar after they reissued it. And now it's like 25 or more. It's 30. I don't know what it is today, but it's incredibly higher. And so with crypto, there is an actual, or with anything scarce, there's an actual incentive to save. You save and you might become wealthier later. Whereas if I also have friends in Venezuela, and they spend everything right away because it's rotting. The value is like, it's like a 10% crash, like a 10% crypto crash, but every single day. Imagine that. And so as soon as you get it, you just spend it. There's no savings, at least not in bolivars. So it's kind of the same thing where you actually have an incentive to not just spend what you got. It actually goes places, and you don't need to be an accredited investor to like walk up to a crypto ATM and put in a $20 bill and now you got some. Like, you don't need all that. There aren't those barriers to investing and saving.
Yeah. And I think it's also really important to have the like approach to anything, where now when I go and buy something, or think about buying something rather, because I usually try not to buy many things nowadays, I'll think about it in terms of like, what could I make instead? Or like, what could I invest this in instead? Like I think about, say I want to go buy, like I have no like new generation like consoles or anything like that for like video games. I mean, I still enjoy video games, but I consider it's like, oh, if I were to go and buy like a new generation console that's like $300-400 or something, or I could buy stocks like dividend stocks that will pay me, $20 for the rest of my life or something like that per year. And I think about that in like for every purchase I make now, whether it's crypto or stocks or whatever. And I think that's a really important perspective change so that people can kind of I guess internalize what that actually is going to do for you, and just changing that perspective. I think it's really really important. Like, what are your thoughts on, or how did you kind of make that switch in your mindset when you started financial minimalism?
Yeah, so a lot of it, a lot of financial minimalism is sort of like a necessary thing, and there's like as far as like hobbies and things to have, like I used to be a PC gamer back in the day, but I was 16, I got a girlfriend, and then I didn't have time for it anymore. And then, once in a while over the next 10 years, I dabbled again. But at that point, it's just like, why do I don't have time for that, so why do I do it? And same thing with like having like cable or whatever, all these online subscriptions to all these things. It's like, well, you don't really need it. You got to focus on the things that matter to you. And it just, people do it. It's not that weird if you think about it, but it is because people are very impulsive and they're very on autopilot. They don't think about what they're doing before they do it. They don't think about, what do I want out of life? What do I want out of this? Do I like, people just think, oh, I'm going to buy the new game console because I like it, and I'm going to pay for all, what is it, Hulu Plus and Disney Plus and all the other things. I'm going to pay for that because I like that. I like having access to that. And I like having a good car. I'm going to pay for that. And I like you just start, and you don't actually think about what you want your life to look like. And you don't just like design something that's quality but minimalist around that core thing that you want to do. It's like, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want your life to look like? And if you think, okay, I want to spend my working days, my working hours doing something I love, and you decide, what do you want to do? And then you're like, all right, what do I actually want to do in the time that I'm not doing that? You say, well, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then you just focus in on those couple things, and then just, it's okay to say no to all the rest. Like, I mean, I know some people that don't have, even cell phones at all. And I mean, while I'm not one of those people, especially for crypto reasons, it's, it's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. One thing I do is I don't have any notifications on my phones these days. I just have them on silent all the time. And I just instinctively check it enough that I don't miss things, but I'm also not like lying in bed. Bzz, bzz, oh, what's that? That stress hanging over you. And so it's okay to say, if it's okay to turn off notifications, it's okay to not pay for things you're not actively using. It's okay to be like, I like that, I'll use it once in a while. Why don't you get heavy use things? Like a lot of people would say, oh, I want to get a bunch of home gym equipment, and if you don't have a garage, don't even bother, right? But I just got a pull-up bar and some gymnastic rings, and that's it. And I can do everything off of that. And would some things be nice? Maybe, but let's be honest, how much would I actually use them? So no. It's like, you should pitch budget items to yourself and just justify them. Like, oh, I really want this. Like, should we? Like, you actually convince yourself. Start with no, and you're selling yourself on the idea of like, what do I want to do? Do I like, oh, I want to go out and do this. It's just like, now I got to role play this like evil budget master person that just doesn't want to do anything fun. And you just role play that and just say, I don't know about that. Well, didn't we just eat out last time? Well, maybe not. Or do we really need to spend money on this? And just role play that person. If you can't sell it to yourself, then don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Like, one thing that I always have done is I try to make like deals or like trades with myself. So like, say I'm going to Uber over to my friend's place because they're having a party or something on the weekend. I say to myself, you know what? I'm instead going to just walk there because that $10 could go to something else or whatever it might be. Or maybe I'll walk twice and then I'll Uber the third time or something like that. I try to make like little deals where it's like, I'm not always just taking the easy way out. I'm making it challenging sometimes. And I think a huge part of financial minimalism is just delayed gratification. Just the longer you can put off, like gratifying yourself or like getting the thing that you really wanted, the easier it's going to be to save up to actually be able to get something like that. And
Yeah.
and I
And I wouldn't
think
even say we wouldn't even say delayed gratification. It's also maximized gratification because we do start to realize there's a lot of
mhm,
stuff you were spending money on wasn't gratifying you. It just was
yeah,
like it was just money out the window, and you think you need it for some reason. But like for example, it's a good quality of life thing to walk. It's good for your health and being outside, especially in these times when everyone's inside all the time. It's great for it feels great. You have a lot of thinking time. It's like if you can afford to go take a walk, it's a luxury. Not paying can be a luxury sometimes.
yeah, I totally agree. And I think once people start actually like budgeting and stuff, and I feel like a lot of this all kind of comes together. Like it's hard to just do one thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, kind of got to incorporate a lot of these different things together to truly take full advantage. Because I think it's really hard to be conscious of what you're spending and get into this mindset if you're not budgeting, right? So I think there's a lot of things that you have to do, and then it kind of all brings it into focus. Um, but yeah, I think budgeting was a huge aspect for me, to actually understand how much I was putting to certain things, and then I look, over a year, and I'm like, wow, I spent, you know, $2,000 on clothes or something, and it's just like, wow, what could I have done with that instead? And and like you said, just having clothes so that no one notices that you're wearing the same clothes. I just have like all the same color kind of t-shirts. So
Yeah, of
I mean,
course.
I do obviously change them, but very very cheap, like H&M.
Hmm.
Like I just try to keep it very very simple. And ever since I've started budgeting, I've drastically cut down all of my spending because you can actually see it. And if you're updating it like every day or very frequently, I like sometimes I'll even just go and just like look at my budget. Like I'm not even updating, I'm not even doing anything. I'm just like, what could I potentially do here? And I'll just like give it a look for like 20 minutes. And I think it's just really, really important to just be really aware of your spending, because you can't I can't remember who said this, but I think this is an like extremely relevant quote. It is, you can't improve what you do not track and measure.
Hmm. Of
And
course.
and that's so true, right? Like how could an athlete become a great athlete if they weren't tracking their previous time for their run, or whatever it might be? And you got to apply the same thing to finance, to anything. You have to track it. Otherwise it's going to be so challenging for you to improve, because you don't know if you're improving, and if you don't know, you don't have the motivation or the encouragement to continue trying to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing about trying the fiat free challenge is you actually have to think about spending for once. You have to think about what do I
Yeah,
spend? What can I do? And sometimes, I mean, you can do everything off of it basically. But
yeah,
because it's in a new emergent technology, not everywhere accepts it, obviously. And that makes you have to think about things. And a lot of times, one thing I've noticed is just having no fiat has made me a little bit of been made me lazy about spending money, because now it's like, well, can I'm not going to figure it out. I don't need it anyway. And so that kind of like drives you into the not spending kind of mindset. And then all of a sudden you just have all these digital tokens, and then you actually get excited when you do get to spend things. So not only does it bring the joy back into spending money, when not like it was ever miserable, but it makes it happier. And then at the same time, making you not want to do it a whole lot. So it's kind of a great two for one. And as you said about measuring, um, it- a lot of people would be scared to measure just how much they're reliant on the system, which
mhm,
100%, let's just put it 100 for most people, just 100. And so if you actually try something, now you say, hey, I can do with 40%. And it's like, all right, well, if I'm a 60% living on stuff that can't be controlled, then if I can hack that, then I'm not so scared about the future anymore. I'm not going to vote for some crazy politician who promises the world because I'm scared. I'm not going to go, sacrifice all kinds of other stuff because I'm scared. I'm going to live without fear because I know where I stand.
yeah, I think that's really really important. All right, well, we've been going for a little over an hour. I think we
Hmm.
covered I think we've covered a lot of really great stuff. So I think we'll call it here. Is there anything else you want to say to the audience before we end this off?
Yeah, just hashtag fiat-free challenge starts May 1st. Engage with it. There's a lot of us that are more than happy to chat with you, talk, answer questions. I'm going to post this stuff, the how to live on dash videos that are super user friendly on the Digital Cash Network, which is a YouTube channel and a much bigger than on YouTube library channel, lbry.tv. And on, I'm on 3Speak and stuff as well. But let's just keep to those two ones. And just, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at TheDesertLynx. Desert is in dry place, Lynx is in kitty cat. And my Cointree link, I don't know, do you use Cointree at all?
No, I don't. What is it?
It's like Linktree, but has crypto donation addresses as well. It's run by Naomi Brockwell and those people. So
okay. Yeah.
cointr.ee/TheDesertLynx has like all my stuff there. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And I would also recommend, if you're not currently, I use crypto domains like Unstoppable Domains and ENS. That's kind of like what I use for my crypto donations instead of like Cointree. But I guess that's more for like listing them versus like actually sending. But I highly recommend those if you're not. Really, really interesting solutions for that. Anyways, thank you so much for coming on. I think this has been a really great dive into what the fiat-free challenge is going to look like and how people can actually take advantage of spending crypto in their everyday life. So everyone watching, please get involved and try out the fiat-free challenge for May. I know these are trying times, but if you can get involved, that'd be really awesome. And we'd love to see you sharing posts about that and everything on social media. Thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
It's and great pleasure.
And very soon we will do another podcast on your channel where we'll talk about earning cryptocurrency on crypto and blockchain social media platforms for people who might not want to be like spending, they'd rather earn it. That's definitely possible, and that's a great way to get started. So we'll also talk about that very soon in the future. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you.